write down the pros and cons of the choices they have in front of them. It might be
Nice.
more than even two. But let's say there's two. Let's say I'm choosing to either do Schooley Mitchell or stay in my job. Let's write down the pros and cons. And then let's talk about each one of them and determine what's the worst that can happen with that con, what's the best that can happen with that pro, and how can I mitigate any of the cons? But you do it on both sides. Once the person starts to document those things, they start to get a much more clear picture of what is most important to them and what their fears and risks are in their inside, which ones are real and which ones they can work with and overcome.
Yo, this is the Streetwise podcast, where we help you level up your game, level up your leadership, and level up your life. I'm your host, Matthew McReynolds. I'm a multi-brand franchisee, and I'm a franchise consultant, which means I help people find, launch, and build their ideal franchise business. My main goal is to help you get off of zero and become the person that your dreams need you to be. Buckle up, get your popcorn ready, let's go. All right, Streetwise Nation, we're talking to Dennis Schooley Mitchell here today on the Streetwise stage. Mr. Dennis, thank you for joining. I appreciate you for hopping on.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Matthew. I'm glad to talk with you.
So this is actually our first time interacting, and so could you explain to me kind of your role with Schooley Mitchell, how that came into existence, and how that now affects your current day-to-day?
Sure. And I mean, that's kind of two separate things in terms of how it came into existence and what my role is.
Okay.
So let's start with the existence part, because that's sort of what goes back about 25 years. Now, hopefully my personality doesn't belie this, but I'm actually a CPA. I'm an accountant. Hopefully I'm a little more exciting than most are. But I just say that in fun, of course. But I ran a normal sort of accounting firm back then with some partners about 25 years ago. We did a lot of different things like management consulting and computer consulting, even sports consulting. And as a result, our own telecom costs started going up and up and up. And we kind of knew why, because we were doing more travel and things like that, but we didn't really have a good handle on it. So we asked one of our programming people to write us some software so we could understand why they went up. And when we looked at it properly, we understood that it actually was 30% more than what we should have been paying. And we thought, well, aren't we kind of stupid? And then we went, well, wait a minute here. If we're stupid, probably our clients are kind of stupid too. And we had 700 of those. So really, and one of our clients was a big franchise company that we had helped convert from cash register to computers. So that's how far back it goes.
Okay.
So I learned a lot about franchising through that process, and it kind of came together, more by chance than anything else. And that's where it started. And so I guess when you ask me what's my function, I guess my title is I'm the founder. That's because that idea that sprang up back then is really where we started. Now, my role at this point, which you asked me as well, is I run the franchising side of the business and the sales and marketing side of the business. So I do a lot of the sales and marketing programs, the training, and of course, the development side on bringing new people that are looking to join Schooley Mitchell. That's what I do. Even though we've grown into a bit bigger business, we have 280 franchises or so. We have about 140 people working in our head office on our support team. We still have a bit of a family feel. My wife and I actually run the business together. So she's not only better looking, she's smarter than me. So she runs the programming departments and the production teams and the operations and things like that. So that was a long-winded answer to a fairly simple question.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much for meeting me there. You answered it the exact way that I wanted you to. And you actually answered my follow-up question, which I don't really know how to feel about, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you decided to franchise the business, I see the initial founders have to choose between going into the franchise development side and staying over the operations side. How did you make that decision for yourself in determining what seat was better for you?
Well, that evolved over time. I mean, in the beginning, I was really doing both with a small group of people. And, we brought on some really good people, either through our existing business or new people that we've hired. And it just turned out that they had really great skill sets on the operations side. And I will certainly concede that my wife, Beth, has a lot more skill on the operations side as well. So
I was waiting for that. Yeah.
I mean, it really was sort of a natural attrition kind of thing. But really, we had our fingers in every part of the business to start out with, including development of, the software and the tools and the what we call the warehouse. That's our intranet, all that stuff. So we were all involved in all of that in the beginning. It's just become much more specialized now as we've grown.
So this might be personal, but that's what I do on this show. So my wife and I got married on March 12th, 2016, and then we went to Virginia Beach to launch our first franchise business, Mosquito Joe, on March 13th, 2016. And so we were back to back, newly married, newly business owners, and we're in it together in many different ways. Well, how has it been for you working alongside your wife in this organization as you've scaled?
Well, it's been great. I mean, as an advisor, I've often advised people not to get involved with
Sure.
spouses because it's
Yeah.
kind of risky on
Wisdom.
two fronts, both business
Sure.
and personal. But we've been able to manage it very well. We've got a big, long office hall. We know enough to stay at one end and the other end. So
There it
that's
is.
just smart. Okay.
There it is.
No, it's been really good. Our skills complement each other very well, and she's really great at the operations side and the more practical side. I'm more on the aggressive development and how do we get clients, how do we get franchises side of things.
I love that. Were there any, for lack of a better word, like hacks, anything that you guys figured out, tips, tricks that you were able to, maybe strategies is a better word, that you're able to implement for each other that um, helped you sustain?
I mean, that's probably a really long answer in terms of what we've
Sure.
developed from this idea from 25 years ago to what we are now. So there would be a lot of hacks and special things, but we're pretty proud of what we've developed here at Schooley Mitchell. And it comes from original theories that we had in terms of making sure we communicate, making sure that we really treat our referral sources better than anybody else. And we've really achieved that. So if there's a hack, we figured out systems to be able to do that, to make sure there was communication at every single level, at every transaction level. And I think we're pretty highly respected for the fact that that's true.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So getting into Schooley Mitchell, I'm pretty new to understanding the concept. It was recently broken down, and it seems like such a phenomenal opportunity for individuals who are trying to make the transition from business, being a W-2 employee to somebody that's a business owner on their own. What was
Yep.
it like for you guys in making the transition into franchising and providing the opportunity for all of your owners today?
Well, when we started, franchising was much more all about hamburgers and muffler parts and chicken, right? And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
a professional, I'm not saying we were the first, but there weren't a whole lot of B2B type business models that were franchised. So it was sort of a frontier that we had to, discover on our own and
Interesting.
explore on our own. So, but I mean, we did have guidance. I was a member of the IFA very early on and certainly used a lot of the people there that had experience in whatever their systems were to help give me advice and mentor me. And so I used that to learn things, but we certainly put our own spin and our own method of doing those things. And I think we've become a very unique business at this point, with all that being the grounding, 2.5 decades ago. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It does. And I'm curious, could you maybe break down what Schooley Mitchell is, what Schooley Mitchell does?
Yeah. So we are a professional business. We do consulting for business clients, except it's very specific types of consulting. We don't charge fees to do what we do. So what we do is we help companies of any size reduce their costs. Now, we're not talking about all costs, but we have about 16 different cost categories that we look at. Things like telecom, merchant services, courier, waste, software, all those things. The way I describe it is that we're going to look at all those expenses below the gross margin line in a financial statement for a business. We're not going to look at the cost of steel or payroll or those main things that the business is good at themselves. We're going to look at all those things below that line that are causing death by 1,000 cuts, because they're
Sure.
very difficult to control. So what we do is we analyze all that, but we don't charge fees to do the analysis. We simply share in the savings that we create for that client. So if we're not able to find savings for the client through our process of analyzing it, identifying errors, eliminating redundant services, and just simply getting them better prices, then we don't charge them any fees. So it's a complete
Nice.
contingent model where the client themselves takes no risk at all. They just simply have us look at their bills and their contracts, negotiate with their vendors, and see if we can get them a better situation than they're already in.
Being on the frontier of a business to business model for a franchise, what type of things did you have to grow through? Maybe you had some obstacles you had to overcome along the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you, it never ends. I mean, we're
Sure.
continually
Yeah.
developing new tools. I mean, our software, the warehouse I I mentioned earlier, we've put millions of dollars into that over the years. We've got 9 full-time programmers that work on that every single day. So we're always continuing to improve our tools and our systems, and to run a business like this, you need things like email templates and letter templates and contracts and agreements and checklists. We've developed all that. So to answer your question, each month that goes by, we're adding to the value of the system for all those things so that someone that comes in, they don't have to worry about any of that. That's here. That's
Got
turnkey.
it. Got it. So somebody like me who that just analyzing all that data is bane of my existence. I could still potentially operate as a franchisee of Schooley Mitchell because that's not necessarily my role and what I would have to do in the day to day. Is
Well,
that what you mean?
absolutely. And actually, that's a different point than I was just making. I was kind of making the point that any of those things you need to operate are going to be there. But the analysis, now that's a separate thing. And I'm glad you asked me that because,
Okay,
see,
cool.
there's sort of two sides to this business. One is getting the clients, building the relationships, getting renewals with those clients, getting referrals, presenting the reports, all the kind of fun stuff, the interactive stuff that
Yeah.
a business person would do. The stuff that we do here, and we do it all, is the analysis of those bills for that client. No, it's not me. We've got people. Oh, we've got specialists in every one of our 16, 18 cost categories that will take those bills, take those contracts, do the negotiation with the vendors, and prepare the reports that are going to show the client the savings. Our franchisees don't have to do any of that. And as a matter
Wow.
of fact, they don't have to be experts in any of these expense categories. They gain enough knowledge that they can talk about it, what we're looking for, how to discuss it with the client, but they do not have to be experts in any of these things. In fact, is we don't want them to be.
Sure. So what does your internal team look like? You say it's not you personally. You guys have the entire
Yeah.
team set up. Maybe break that down for me so I can understand. I'm so curious on how you
Yeah.
guys have scaled this thing.
Well, we have about 140 people or so right now that are working here in our
Okay.
head office to support our
Nice. Yeah.
franchisees. I would say a little more than half of them are analysts. So we've got a telecom team, we've got a merchant services team, we've got a waste team, we've got a shipping team. So all of those people are doing the work I just described, what we call production here. It's the analysis part and the reports part. But then we've got a big team of other support people too. So we assign a coach to every single franchise that joins us. So they get a one-on-one coach. So we've got a team of coaches to help them develop their business and execute
So
the programs, things like that.
what's the avatar for a coach? What might their background be like?
Well, it's two things. It's sales and marketing focused. I mean, our sales
Okay.
training is very in depth. It's kind of like getting the fire hose right down your throat when you go
Yeah.
through it all. So the
Yeah.
coach
Come
is to
on.
help the franchisee make sure they can stay organized, stay on top of it, do the things that are best for them because there's a lot of autonomy there. But then the coach will also make sure the franchisee doesn't waste time trying to look for things or find things or use the intranet system to an effective way. So they do both, and mostly sales and marketing focused on how to get clients. They're going to help the franchisee with that.
Okay. So you've got the analysts, you've got the coaches, and then what's next?
Well, we have a marketing team of about 14 people as well. So we've got content writers, we've got videographers, we've got creative artists, we've got social media experts. Those people all support our franchisees in all those ways. So every franchisee that comes on board, we develop a website for them. We set up a business Facebook. We help them customize their LinkedIn. We'll set up Instagram or YouTube for them. We'll do all of those things. And our people are the ones generating all the content in multimedia fashion for our franchisees. So that's another part of our team.
Love it. Oh, thank you so much for the breakdown. So, what is the role of the franchisee when they come in and they're working on the business, but anytime you launch, you're going to find yourself in the business in some capacity. What does that look like as these guys start, launch, and then start to scale?
Yeah, and it is fully scalable. I mean, there is a leverage model built within, even if they don't hire people. I mean, they
Interesting.
have the ability to hire people if they want, whether subcontracted or W-2. And I'd say about 80% of our people work on their own, and they still gain great results if they work at the business because of the leverage model, because we're doing all the work. But then about 20%, they do go out and scale because they do hire people on their own and decide to build a bigger business. So they're completely free to make that choice themselves. So again, I don't
Sure.
know if I answered your full question or not, but hopefully that helped a bit.
No, it does. It does. Because when they're hiring people, are they hiring business development folks that are going out and generating the connections, the relationships, or is it a little more complex than even that?
No, usually that is what it is. I mean,
Got it.
usually the franchisee is going to do that as well, build the relationships and obtain some clients and things like that. But if they want to complement what they're doing or add to what they're doing, they would hire another development person, salesperson, people like that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful because at least from my mindset and the people that I engage with, it's either somebody who's already starting to become a serial entrepreneur and they're liking the idea of stacking things in their portfolio, or it's the individual who is some a little bit younger, mid 30s. And so the people that I naturally engage with, they're still working their 9 to 5 job, but they want to build something on the side, but they can't completely take the leap yet. And so the way that you defined it was super helpful in speaking into that person. So thank you.
Well, actually, we do have an option for that person beyond what I've just said, too. We have
Come
something
on.
here that we only developed about a year ago called the Builder franchise. And it is for the person that you just described, somebody that they need to keep their job because they either need the revenue flow or the insurance coverage or their spouse won't let them leave it. Whatever the reason is, they're going to keep the job.
Yeah,
And
the job is staying.
the job is staying.
Yeah.
And in the past, we just never could entertain that person because we know the time you commit to this business is what's going to create results. And that's all.
Yes.
Everything else is here. But we have a model. So as long as someone's got 5 or 10 hours available each week during business hours, then we will grant them a franchise under the builder format where they can work part-time. They're going to take longer to build it up, but they are
Yes.
building a business so they can transition anytime they want when they get some more stability built in the business to a full-time franchise if they choose to do that.
Is that a newer program for you guys?
Yeah, it's only in the last year or so.
Yeah, see, I love that model. My only thought would be, because I love it, that would be the thing that I would pitch to all these guys that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I almost wonder, and if it's new, you might not have the stats yet, if people are as bought in when they know that it can be, if it can be part-time. Because for me, that would be a great opportunity. But do you think from a mindset perspective, people lose? Is that a concern for you guys? I guess it's probably the best way that I could ask it.
Certainly it's a concern, but that's a concern with full-time people in a business like this too.
Yeah.
If you're familiar
Very
with
true.
the Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule,
Yes, sir.
I mean, Pareto's a long dead guy, and I'd like to talk to him because I'm trying to make it the Schooley rule and it's not catching on. Here's what I mean by that. What Pareto
Okay.
said was that in any organization like ours, where client acquisition is really an important part of the formula, or any sales force, 20% of the people make 80% of the money. I mean, that's what he proved in his studies. And I agree with him in that regard. But what he did not analyze is the bottom 20%. They don't do a thing. And that's a shock in a franchise because they make an investment, they go through training, they have the same market opportunity, and yet they don't do a thing. So the real model, so I know I'm not actually answering directly what you said, but I'm going to tie it into what you said. The real model is 20-60-20. 20% kill it. 60% are lifestyle driven. And in our business, that means they want to make 75 or 100 grand. That's what they do and they stay there. And then 20% are dogs. So what you
Wow.
said about motivation, and by the way, any business that is like ours that doesn't admit it's 20-60-20, they're lying. I'll tell you that right now. They are lying. So it's always this model. I've seen it for 25 years. So yes, we have that same issue. We want people to be focused, but we also know those people that focus on our business and continue to work 35 hours a week, they can change their lives. So you need to apply that to the part-time person in the same manner. Are some of them going to take that route of doing nothing because it's easy and it's part-time and there's no Yep, they will. Are some people going to sort of make what they want to make for a while and stay there? Yep. But then you're going to get those people that realize, wow, what an opportunity. On a part-time basis, I can start adding clients so that I get to some point where I can transition and change my life. That's what we're after. I wish I had the perfect science to determine which person's going for the top 20-25%, because those people kill it.
Yo, thanks for listening this far. It's at this point in the episode that I want to talk about Streetwise franchising, teaching, training, building. Streetwise franchising. As a franchise consultant, it's my job, it's my absolute pleasure, and it's my mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs find, launch, and build their ideal business. I've been a franchise owner for almost a decade. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to build a team. If you're ready to get off of zero, if you're ready to build something for yourself, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's get the conversation started. Don't wait until tomorrow to build your future. It starts today. Streetwise franchising. Stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Let's get back to the episode. Beautiful. When you guys were looking to scale the business, so after you came up with the concept and you were building it internally, what was the decision like to when you decided we're going to go the franchising route?
Yeah.
What was it about franchising that had you guys decide to go down that path?
And I mean, there were some fairly intense conversations back then,
I bet.
because
Yeah.
the choice was, we knew we had a service that was needed. We knew we had a service we could grow on a large scale in both of our countries, the United States and Canada. Um, and so the option was, can we hire people across two countries, coast to coast, east and west, north and south, and then make sure we motivate them. So hire and fire and motivate and manage. Or are we better off with a franchise model where we put people in business for themselves, where hopefully they're very motivated to build something to change their lives, and we'll create a system and take a small portion, which is royalties. So we just chose option two. We just felt it was better to have those people motivated to build something for themselves. It was the right decision, but we sure didn't know that, in the beginning. It was just our best guess.
Sure. Well, that's
Hopefully
awesome.
educated guess.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I understand the scalability and the opportunity, but also the risk in, you're giving away equity essentially to other people, and you're giving away pieces of the pie.
Well, there's a big risk too if you do it right. Now, I'm not saying every franchisor does it right, but if you do it right, there's a lot of expense to launch a franchise system, to have your FDD in the proper format, to have your systems ready for franchises, even though you don't have any yet. So there's a
Sure.
big investment if you do it right, rather than going by the seat of your pants. So that was the decision that we made.
So maybe walk me through that process. What did you guys have to do, and then what did you kind of fall on your face and then figure out and fail forward as you were making your way through that?
Well, one major thing that was, I guess, in the beginning, I would term a failure, but created a great success, was the fact that we outsourced some of the programming to develop our tools and systems. Because, see, to do what we do, we've got to have tools to analyze these expenses and do it efficiently and create reports and things like that. We outsourced that, and that was a big mistake. We were beholden to a company that didn't perform, that charged way more than they should, and it was very frustrating. So it was very early on when Beth, my wife, and I decided, you know what? We're not going to do this. We're going to get rid of them. We're going to hire our own programming team. We're going to develop our own tools. Now, that has cost us millions of dollars over, the last 25 years, but it was the best decision we ever made. That was a hard lesson learned right in the beginning, but it has also created what we are now today. There's lots of other things you have to decide about too, in terms of, the actual semantics of how the business is going to run, and processes and training and all that. So we had to devise all that before we had a franchise.
Wow. So
If
yeah,
you do it right. Not everybody does it right.
so what are there any certain out of the things that you just listed off, what gets missed most of the time when it goes wrong? When you see things going wrong, what are the key things that you can say, like, ooh, you missed that part?
Well, I mean, oftentimes the mistake is made where someone is successful in their business, so they feel they can replicate it, and they decide they're just going to franchise because it sounds so sexy. Well, and there are companies out there, and shame on them sometimes too, that they're encouraging people to franchise when that company really shouldn't be franchised. They either don't really have a secret sauce, or they don't have their systems tied together tight enough to bring in new people yet. And so the biggest downfall is when you're not prepared. If you don't have proper training in place, you don't have proper tools in place, you don't have proper administrative items that are needed to run a business in place before you bring in your first franchise, you're making a mistake. You're just hoping that that person's going to succeed on their own. That's not what franchising is supposed to be.
Wow. So flip that for me real quick. Say it on the other side. What should everybody have lined up in order before you start bringing franchisees in?
Well, I mean, first of all, you do have to have a secret sauce. I think there's a lot of franchise companies out there that don't have a secret sauce. There's no barrier to competition or to entry into their industry. So any college grad, any person that's got a bit of business experience could replicate what they do and compete with them. To me, I don't get that. I don't think that should be a franchise model. So the secret sauce is the first thing. But after you have that, then you've got to make the judgment. Can this be replicated? Can I get other people to learn how to be successful with this model? And therefore, we've got to prove success before we even roll it out, which we did. But then you've got to have, like I said earlier, you better have some good training to show people how to do it, and then good support so that they can keep doing it the proper way, because, that initial training isn't going to be the only thing they need. But then you need all kinds of things like forms and checklists and agreements and things like that they're going to execute in their day-to-day. And in our world, you better have some good tools to do the actual work. you know?
Absolutely.
So all of these now in a restaurant, it better be the right deep fryer at the right temperature with the right kind of oil. That's
There it
the
is.
kind of thing that brings that sort of business together. But that should all be there before you even bring in franchisee number one.
There it is. What mentors and resources have you plugged in over the years to help your personal and professional growth?
Well, like I said, I was a member of the IFA right back in the 25 years ago, and I certainly learned a lot there just by talking to other people. Some didn't know much more than me, but working together and talking together, we figured it out together. And then there were other people that had lots of experience that I was able to, just cull out a few little nuggets here and there. I mean, there's some people that would be deemed to be icons in the world of franchising that I've actually met personally, and that's kind of cool. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying they taught me everything they know, but just that participation with these different people, attending seminars. The instructors were all people that had good knowledge, and I just learned through. And when I say it wasn't just me. We learned through those types of people.
Oh, I love that. So for somebody in the listener in the audience might not understand what the IFA is. Could you give a brief breakdown of that organization and how you plugged into it?
Yeah, it's the International Franchise Association. It's really the U.S. Franchise Association, is what it is.
Okay.
See, most countries, there's the Canadian Franchise Association, there's a British Franchise Association, there's the IFA, which is the International Franchise Association, which is the U.S. version of that. And it's really just an organization of franchisors, although it does include franchisees now as well. It didn't in the beginning, um, where they lobby the government on behalf of franchising to make sure the laws don't affect franchising in a negative way. Provide education to franchisors. They provide events where franchisors can get together and exchange ideas and have seminars and things like that. So that's the organization. Believe me, when I started, it's a far cry from what it is now. I think the first one I went to, there was maybe a couple hundred people there. I was just at one about 3 months ago. I think there was close to 5,000 people there. So it's
Wow.
developed that much over the years, and it's become a very important lobbying center for franchising with the government in the individual states and at the national level as well.
Do you keep pretty in tune with some of the issues and some of the topics that the IFA advocates for?
Some, yes, some don't affect us as much, and I don't stay as much on top of those. But yes,
So
in some ways.
which ones kind of give me some examples of some things that the IFA advocates? Because me, coming in as a franchisee, now a franchise consultant, I'm still pretty new to a lot of the impact that the bigger picture has, and my audience definitely is, and so I love being a curator in this way.
Yeah, and and I've sort of become the flip of what I was. I was the learner before, and now I kind of find myself as the mentor myself in a lot
That's
of
how it
cases.
works. Yes, sir.
Um, but on the legislative side, you know, it's really a problem where franchisors decades ago took advantage of franchisees. And so therefore the legal entities at the state level usually, and it became federal after that, had to bring in laws to make sure that people weren't taking advantage of investors, okay, the franchisee. Well,
Got it.
that went so far the other way that now the disclosure requirements, the legal requirements on a franchisor are way over the top. So that's sort of what the IFA tries to lobby to make sure, that I don't know how to classify them, that congressman or that senator decides to make up a bunch of laws that are really very harmful to the business environment where they're not achieving what they want to achieve. So the
Sure.
IFA is making sure those kinds of laws that aren't so restrictive that they cause harm to businesses like franchisors or even franchisees. That's what the IFA does.
So it's probably super important for franchisees to be engaged with the IFA and understanding what's going on.
Oh, it is. And it also allows the franchisee to understand both sides of the coin and also the franchisor to understand both sides of the coin as well.
Yeah.
So it is very valuable that way. There is some legislation now, and it's being driven by California actually about minimum wage and making franchisors responsible for employees, even down at the flipping burger stage. Well, that can
Yeah.
be very detrimental to a franchisor in terms of lawsuits and wrongful dismissal, and they really don't have anything. So all of that stuff gets tied into these kinds of decisions. Um, that's what the IFA does, is represents the interests of our businesses to make sure silly legislation isn't passed.
Sure. And this is kind of I wasn't intending on going down this tangent. It came up
Well, neither was I.
organically. And so I appreciate you because I think this, even if this piece right here, even though unintended, might add value to somebody. So somebody who is a franchisee or a new franchisee, are there any ways that maybe you could encourage them to potentially get in plug? How could they easily plug in and start the process of learning about the bigger picture?
Well, the IFA themselves has all kinds of literature that they can tap into,
Nice.
so it's a learning process. There's podcasts, there's seminars, there's webinars. They can join. I mean, we have a commitment here at Schooley Mitchell to lifelong learning. You know, I actually tell every single person that starts a business with us that I think they should read a business book every single month, just because it
Yeah.
keeps the juices
Okay.
flowing. So it's the same
Sure.
kind of thing. If you're going to be a franchisee, don't just flip your burgers or do whatever it is you're
No.
doing. Learn business and learn more and more. And you should always be a sponge to always continually learn new things.
Absolutely. I love that. I resonate with it so much. And just back to what you had said earlier, it is really important that there be open communication on all levels when building up an organization. And for me, being in two franchise systems as a franchisee, two different parent companies, but also being a franchise consultant now with FranChoice, and I am seeing the bigger picture. It gets very, very dicey whenever the franchisees don't understand the mindset of a franchisor and vice versa. It can
Yeah.
get pretty dicey.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, sometimes the franchisor forgets about that person in the field that's got to do things day to day to make that business work. And you need to
Mm,
have that empathy, that understanding of that. But on the other hand, sometimes the franchisee will want what they want, and it really isn't good for the entire system because they're not the only one there. And so that
yeah.
kind of meeting of the minds is necessary. And it's why we have things like an advisory council and certain committees that we have to help with, certain problem solving at Schooley Mitchell. That's why we do that way.
No, I love that. Now it's actually going to be a line of questioning of, do you guys have structures in place to ensure the communication between the franchisor and the franchisee is always healthy with Schoolie
Well,
Mitchell?
we do. We actually, even within our system, we have things like discussion boards and good news and sharing all that stuff. But we also have an advisory council that we meet with 3 or 4 times a year. They pull the franchisees and talk to them and make sure all those ideas and concerns get put forward. And then we meet with them and do that. We've also got a committee, for example, right now is working with our programming team because we're redesigning our CRM for launch in the next few months. So we've got, I
Nice.
think it's 7 or 8 franchisees working along with our programmers to make sure it's what the franchisees want each day. So, yes.
Nice. Nice. Okay. How would you define this chapter of your personal journey, career, and development as you guys have built out this franchise?
Well, I had a discovery day yesterday, and somebody asked me a similar question, and I reflected for a second, and I basically answered that it's pride. I mean, this came from an idea 25 years ago that was really just dust, and it's now developed into what we have today. Like I said, maybe 500 people in Schooley Mitchell either earning a living or building a business.
Wow.
That's a pretty cool thing, and we're pretty proud of it. But we've got bigger goals. We know we're going a lot further, with new clients and helping them save money and new franchisees. We've got a lot of things in our future, but we're proud of where we are. That's really, I guess, if you're asking about evolution, that's one thing we feel very strongly.
Oh, it's cool. Speaking into the leaders of tomorrow, you think about yourself and how, you've grown, and personal development and professional obviously is important to you. How do you encourage the young folks, the younger leaders that are coming up right now that are trying to follow your the trail that you left?
Do you know, I talk about this in every one of our training programs too. The most important word in my dictionary, my personal dictionary, is the word decide. And what I
Mm,
would say to any young person, if you can figure out, sit back and think about it and decide what you're going to do, and then what you decide, you stay with it, because that's what happens. People go one direction, then they kind of wane and they let it, but if you decide, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this happen, just make it happen. It's all about mindset.
I love it. I love it. What's something big that you guys are pushing for with Schoolie Mitchell today? What's something that you're excited about? Do you have any big initiatives, any areas that are really popping? Any, you can take this any way you want.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little bit hard to answer because every facet of our business is an evolution and they're all developing for the next stage. Whether that's the tools, whether that's the training, whether that's the sales and marketing strategy, they're all evolving. I would say one of our major things is that we're continuing to add new expense categories. And the reason for that is because as we do that, that means we can save more money for our clients in different areas that we don't now. And that means our franchisees can make more money because they share in those savings. So that's really our number one, I guess, thing overall, other than evolution of everything, is to identify, um, master, and develop tools to analyze new expense categories.
Got you. And something else I wanted to touch on when you speak into the mindset of these franchisees, um, beginning with the end in mind, having a vision and a North Star. What do you like to see from the franchisees when they come into your system? And is there anything that you notate that allows you to maybe not predict, but you've got data now to represent the franchisees with specific mindsets that do well and those that don't?
Yeah, I mean, we lay out all the protocols that they can follow. There's lots of options for them, but the biggest thing that we need to know, and of course we don't know the answer till we see it in action, is, are you
Sure.
willing to work that 35 hours a week? Because if you're going to work at 35 hours a week doing the things that we do here, you're going to succeed. It's as simple as that. But I can't read a person's heart and mind,
Yeah.
But then generally after about 6 months in and they keep doing it, then I know, okay, they're going to go. They're going to go to that top.
Love it. If you could wave a wand over the franchise world, all the IFA, your Schooley Mitchell system, franchisees, and change maybe one thing, something that grinds your gears that you think we can do better at as a space. Is there anything?
I guess it's for franchisees to understand franchisors better, and I suppose the flip of that is the franchisor has to understand the franchisee. I think that's the main thing, because boots in the ground sometimes are different than best strategies that the franchisor may have. But a lot of times, like I said earlier, the franchisee is looking only at personal interest as opposed to interest of the whole system. If magic wand would be fix that disconnect.
Yeah, create the connection. Create the connection. Do you find that? So I will say that was a big part of me wanting to do this show, is to tell your story, to tell other people's stories, and to be a bridge. And so we can understand the narratives on both sides. And so I
Yeah.
appreciate you for coming on,
And
because
I
that's
will
a
tell
big
you
part of
that
this.
comment that I just made is about franchises in general. We've actually
Yeah.
been very lucky with Schooley Mitchell. We have an annual conference every year, and our people love to get together. We don't have conflicts and knocking heads very much at all. So
Oh, I love that.
we're pretty happy. So, but
I love
you
that.
ask Magic Wand for the entire strategy of franchising, and that's how I.
Yeah. And then you've answered this many times, but just for the sake of getting it down as a legitimate question, what do you love truly about franchising now that you've been in it for this long and you've built up this system?
Well, the fact that, we feel the pride in what we've developed, but I think the one thing is the way that you feel when someone really takes the model and changes their life, and I mean for the
Mm.
better. I mean, that's pretty cool. We got a franchisee that he just went to Europe for 6 weeks with his family, and with his whole family. He never would have been able to do that if he didn't join Schooley Mitchell. So we've got all kinds of stories like that. So that's really the most satisfying part of the whole thing, when you're able to know in your heart that you've been responsible for that person's success.
Oh,
Not me
that's
personally,
awesome.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great, man. That's great. Well, I appreciate you for hopping on. Is there anything that I missed? Anything that you wanted to give a shout out to that we haven't hit on yet?
I don't really think so. As you can tell, you ask me a question, you're going to get a lot of words back. So I'm fine to talk about anything. I mean, we would certainly like to build great relationships with franchise. So that's something that
Yeah.
we're continuing to develop. So no, I don't have anything specific.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you for coming on. And this has been great just to get to know you, to hear your story. I guess a question that I would ask is, considering the broker networks and navigating that sort of a space. I've been in franchise now for about 10 months,
Yep.
not quite a year, and so I'm still learning the nuances and the balance and what
Yep.
that relationship should look like. So I'd love to hear from your opinion, your side, what
Well,
what you look for.
yeah, we deal with all of the networks. The relationships are built on a one-to-one basis, though, and we've got a team on our franchise development side of about 12 people too, and so we're very ingrained in developing one-on-one relationships with you guys, but also with the others. Not everybody wants to participate in that, so the ones that want to participate on the broker or the consultant side are the ones that are going to really appreciate Schooley Mitchell, because we really make it a mandate for our people to communicate with the broker every single transaction that happens, every interaction with that candidate that gets referred to us. So I think that's really what we want to do, is continue that education and communication that we've had for so many years with you guys as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so my last official question then, thinking about somebody who is maybe they're struggling in their current position, or they know they need to make a change, but they're slightly afraid on taking that first step. How do you coach that person up in making the change, taking the step that they need to?
Yeah, I ask them to write down the pros and cons of the choices they have in front of them. It might be
Nice.
more than even two. But let's say there's two. Let's say I'm choosing to either do Schooley Mitchell or stay in my job. Let's write down the pros and cons, and then let's talk about each one of them and determine what's the worst that can happen with that con, what's the best that can happen with that pro, and how can I mitigate any of the cons. But you do it on both sides. Once the person starts to document those things, they start to get a much more clear picture of what is most important to them and what their fears and risks are in their inside, which ones are real and which ones they can work with and overcome. So that
Absolutely.
exercise is to help with that and try to help them make a good decision.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love asking that question at the end. Everybody's answers is a little bit different, and that was awesome.
But
Thank you
that's the
so
best one
much.
ever, right?
That was up there. That was up there. Top 5. Oh, Mr. Dennis Schooley, I appreciate you so much, man. It's been great. A true pleasure to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this platform with me. I truly do this from my heart to try to introduce you to people that might not have heard about Schooley Mitchell, but also might look at a position that you're sitting in and have no possible idea of the actual hard work that it takes to get there. And so this is on multiple levels, man. I just appreciate you coming on, and this was a big value add for me.
Well,
So thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for having me, Matthew. I'll do it anytime you want me to. As you can
There
tell,
we
I
go.
can.
There we go. No, this has been awesome. To the listener, Schooley Mitchell, if you guys are interested in this concept, reach out to me. I can introduce you to somebody from the team. But until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace. All right, everybody. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Hey, if this episode added any value to your life at all, please like it, share it, give me a 5-star review. It's the only way that this show is going to gain traction and help more people achieve their dreams. If you're ready to start your franchise journey, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's set up a time to talk. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.